Well, 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 here we are again. Another day, another Meghan, Duchess of Sussex post, and somehow the internet has managed to transform a simple lifestyle moment into a full-blown royal investigation. Because apparently, in 2026, opening a bottle of rosé is no longer just opening a bottle of rosé. No, no, no. According to certain corners of the media, every glass, every flower, every cheese board, every outfit choice, and apparently every single shoe has to come with a secret royal code attached. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back because today we are talking about the latest episode of the never-ending saga where Meghan, Duchess of Sussex, does something completely normal and certain people immediately start running in circles trying to decode it. So Meghan shared a beautiful video, a relaxed, elegant lifestyle moment. She's holding two glasses, she has her bottle of Brut, she pops the cork, there is a beautiful setup with cheese board, flowers, and her other wines sitting there. It is giving, I'm enjoying my life. It is giving, I created something, I'm celebrating, I'm having a good moment. It is giving a woman enjoying the fruits of her own work. But somehow, instead of simply appreciating the moment, the royal commentary machine looked at this and said, wait a minute, she is wearing shoes. Yes, shoes. Humanity survived wars, inventions, technological revolutions, and somehow we have arrived at the point where suede mules are now a major headline. Truly, we have reached the peak of civilization. Somewhere a historian is crying. Now here comes the interesting part. The shoe Meghan wore were Veronica Beard Catherine Mules, and suddenly certain media outlets started pushing this idea that Meghan was making some kind of subtle tribute to Kate, because the shoe has the name Catherine. That's it. That is the evidence. A name. A shoe name. A designer name. And from that, we are supposed to believe Meghan sat down, planned her outfit, looked at these shoes and thought, yes, today I will send a mysterious message through my footwear. The level of imagination is honestly impressive. But let's actually talk about this logically. If the entire meaning of the shoe was connected to Kate, if the shoe carried this huge royal symbolism, if it was somehow this obvious tribute piece, why was nobody talking about it before Meghan wore it? Why did the shoe not become an obsession before Meghan put it on? Why did it suddenly become a conversation after Meghan appeared in it? Because that is where the story gets interesting. The shoe was just a shoe until Meghan wore it, and then suddenly people wanted to know where it came from. And suddenly, the shoe is sold out. That is influence. That is the Meghan effect. And this is exactly the part that some people struggle to understand. They want to talk about Meghan's influence while pretending Meghan has no influence. They want to say nobody cares, but somehow there are articles, discussions, videos, and debates about a pair of brown suede mules. The contradiction is sitting right there, wearing the shoes. Because if Meghan truly had no impact, nobody would care what shoes she wore. Nobody would be writing headlines. Nobody would be creating theories. Nobody would be asking questions. But here we are. A lifestyle video became news. A shoe became a debate. A simple moment became another chapter in the Meghan conversation. And let's be honest, this is not new. For years, Meghan has had this ability to bring attention to things she wears. A coat, a dress, a handbag, a pair of shoes. Something can be sitting quietly on a brand website, and then Meghan appears wearing it, and suddenly people want to know everything about it. That's not a conspiracy. That's not magic. That is branding. That is celebrity influence. That is literally how fashion works. People have always looked at public figures for inspiration. The difference is that with Meghan, the reaction seems to be much stronger because she represents something bigger to many people. She represents a different kind of public image. She represents a woman who stepped away from a role that many believed she had no choice but to stay in. She built a different path. She created her own platform. And whether people like it or not, that story is powerful. Now, back to the shoe situation. The funniest part is that some people tried to make the entire story about Kate, but the actual headline became, "Meghan wore it and people noticed." That is the part that keeps happening. The conversation always comes back to Meghan. Even when the attempt is to redirect attention elsewhere, somehow the spotlight moves right back. It is almost like the internet has its own sense of irony. Because imagine trying to prove Meghan is not influential, and the proof you use is an example of Meghan creating massive attention. It's like saying nobody listens to this person, and then publishing an entire article about what that person did. The math is doing gymnastics. Now, nobody is saying fashion cannot have meaning. Of course it can. People use clothes to express themselves. People choose colors, styles, accessories, and designers for different reasons. Fashion can tell a story. But there is a difference between someone choosing something intentionally and outsiders forcing a storyline onto it. Sometimes a shoe is just a shoe. Sometimes a wine moment is just a wine moment. Sometimes a woman is simply enjoying the success of something she built. Not every single thing has to be turned into a royal chess match. And maybe that is what bothers people the most. The fact that Meghan can exist outside the old system and still create moments people pay attention to. She doesn't need a palace balcony. She doesn't need a royal announcement. She doesn't need permission. She can post a video from her own life, wearing her own clothes, promoting her own work, and suddenly the entire conversation shifts. That is a very uncomfortable reality for some commentators, because the old narrative depended on Meghan disappearing. But Meghan did not disappear, she evolved, and every time she steps out, whether it's a major event or a simple lifestyle post, the attention follows. Now, let's talk about the Catherine angle for a moment, because there is something almost funny about the obsession with finding hidden messages. If Meghan wanted to send a message, would she really need to do it through a shoe? The media has spent years turning every move into a statement. So now even silence becomes a statement. A post becomes a statement. A shoe becomes a statement. At some point, the shoe needs a publicist because apparently it has more responsibilities than most politicians. And this is where we get to the bigger conversation, because underneath the shoe debate, underneath the headlines, underneath the endless speculation, there is a much bigger question. Why does Meghan, Duchess of Sussex, continue to generate this level of attention? Why does a simple video become a trending conversation? Why does a fashion choice become a debate? Why does every little detail become something people feel the need to analyze? The answer is actually very simple. Meghan has become a cultural figure, and whether people love her, criticize her, or spend their entire afternoon writing about her while claiming they don't care about her, she remains a person who creates conversation. The internet is funny like that. Humans have this fascinating habit of insisting something is irrelevant while dedicating hours of their lives proving otherwise. A mystery for the ages. Because let's look at the situation. A woman creates a brand. She shares a glimpse into her lifestyle. She wears an outfit. People notice. That's how influence works. Influence is not always a speech on a stage. It's not always a major announcement. Sometimes it's a tiny moment that makes people stop scrolling. And Meghan has always understood that. The power of storytelling is not only in what you say, it's in what people feel. That video was not just about a bottle of wine. It was about atmosphere. It was about celebration. It was about creating a moment. It was about saying, here is a little piece of my world. And millions of people understand that language. That is why lifestyle brands exist. That is why celebrities launch products. That is why companies spend huge amounts of money trying to create emotional connections. Because people do not only buy objects, they buy the feeling attached to those objects. A shoe is not just a shoe. A dress is not just a dress. A product is not just a product. The story around it matters, and Meghan's ability to attach attention to a product is exactly why brands pay attention. Now, the interesting part about the sold out conversation is how quickly the narrative changes. Before Meghan wears something, just another item. After Meghan wears something, everyone wants it. Suddenly, people who never noticed the item before are asking questions. Where is it from? Who made it? Can I get one? And that is why the attempt to make this about Kate becomes a little strange. Because if the goal was to highlight Kate, the actual result was highlighting Meghan's influence. The conversation became about Meghan's impact. Again, the very thing some people try to dismiss is the very thing they keep demonstrating. It is almost like trying to convince everyone a person has no voice while handing them a microphone. The logic is running in circles. And let's talk about the blueprint idea, because when people say Meghan is the blueprint, they're usually talking about how she changed the way modern public figures approach visibility. Before, traditional royal fashion was often presented through a very controlled system. Appearances, events, official portraits, formal moments, everything carefully managed. But Meghan's approach has always leaned more toward personal connection. A glimpse, a behind-the-scenes moment, a lifestyle image, a message that feels closer to everyday people. And that is why brands understand. The modern world has changed. People do not only connect with institutions, they connect with personalities. They connect with authenticity. They connect with people who feel relatable. And that is why social media changed everything. The old rules were built for a different era. Now, someone can post from their own home and create a global conversation faster than a traditional press release. The gatekeepers lost some power, and that makes some people very uncomfortable. Because when a person can create their own narrative, there is less control from outside voices. That is why every Meghan post seems to create a reaction. Because it's not just a post, it's a reminder that she controls her own platform. Now, let's return to the shoe, the Catherine mule, the famous, apparently controversial mule, a shoe that started its day as footwear and somehow ended up in a royal discussion, the little shoe that could. If the shoe had feelings, it would probably be exhausted. Imagine waking up as a fashion item and by lunchtime, you're involved in a debate about monarchy, symbolism, and media narratives. Even the shoe was probably thinking, I was just trying to match an outfit. But the bigger point is this. The attention did not come because of the name alone. The attention came because Meghan wore it. That is the part that cannot be ignored. A person's influence is measured by response. And the response was immediate. People noticed. People searched. People talked. The media wrote. The cycle continued. That is influence. Now, does every single person who buys something Meghan wears become a fan? No. Does every person who likes the shoes care about royal drama? No. People buy things for many reasons. Sometimes they just like the shoes. A revolutionary concept, I know. People making choices based on personal taste instead of writing a 12-page analysis. What a wild idea. But the fact remains that Meghan's appearance brought attention to the product, and that is the entire point of celebrity influence. It does not require everyone to agree. It only requires people to pay attention, and people definitely pay attention. Now, another thing that stands out is the double standard. When other celebrities influence fashion, it is called trend setting. When Meghan does it, suddenly there has to be an explanation. Suddenly there has to be a hidden motive. Suddenly everything becomes suspicious. Why? Why can't the explanation simply be she wore something people liked? Why must every positive reaction have a complicated reason? Sometimes the simplest answer is the answer. People saw something they liked, they wanted it. The end. But apparently, that is too boring. The internet demands a plot twist. Every story needs a villain, a mystery, and a dramatic soundtrack, even a pair of shoes. And that brings us to the bigger picture. Meghan's story has always involved public fascination. People have projected so many different narratives on her. Some see a woman building a new chapter. Some see someone who challenged expectations. Some see a symbol of change. And some people seem determined to analyze every move because they cannot accept that she continues to move forward. But the reality is simple. Meghan is building, she is creating, she is showing up, and people are watching. That is why a small video can become a headline. That is why a shoe can sell out. That is why the conversation keeps coming back. Because attention follows impact. And the biggest irony of all, the more certain people insist Meghan is irrelevant, the more they keep proving that she is not. Because nobody spends this much time discussing someone who has no influence. The shoe story was never really about the shoe. It was about influence. It was about visibility. It was about a woman creating her own space and still commanding attention. And that is exactly why the conversation continues. So while some people are busy trying to decode a pair of suede mules, Meghan is out here enjoying her wine, building her brand, and living her life. And honestly, that might be the biggest message of all. Not a hidden message, not a secret signal, just a woman moving forward. And somehow, that is what keeps making headlines. Because in the strange world of royal commentary, apparently the most powerful thing you can do is simply exist. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next video.